Okay, so we have this practice quiz. It's 15 questions long, and it has verbal phrases that you need to write as algebraic expressions. It has simplification, which requires the correct order of operations, Pemdas, and it also has evaluate, which simply means to plug in your values into each appropriate letter, and then use Pemdas again. So it's a 15-question practice quiz. It's going to be a 15-question quiz. Let's get through this. Number one, the quotient. We should all know that the word quotient means to divide. So you're dividing two things. What are we dividing? We're dividing 13 and y. So I would write it as a fraction, 13 divided by y. Of course, you could write it like this, 13 divided by y. Either one's acceptable. Number two, let's read what it says. 3/7. That's an actual fraction. So everybody should write, let me do it over here, 3/7. Now when you say 3/7 of anything, it's really multiplying 3/7 times that value. So if I say like, what's 1/2 of 20, you're going to say 1/2 times 20, which is 10. So right here, 3/7, the square of b, 3/7 times the square of b. Remember, square means the little exponent 2. Okay, so don't think that it actually means a box, right? Square means an exponent 2. So 3/7 of b squared. So you're going to put b squared, or the square of b. That's your answer right there, 3/7 of b squared. 3/7 times b squared. Or another way of writing it is to actually multiply the two fractions, and you'll get 3b squared over 7. Either one is good. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3 reads, the sum of 19 and twice a number. Let me move it over here. Again, the sum means addition, so we're going to be adding two things. And what are the two things that we're adding? We're adding 19 and twice a number. So 19, we're adding it to twice a number. Twice anything means to multiply it by 2. If I say, what's twice your age? If you're 14, twice your age would be 28. 2 times 14 is 28. So right here, twice a number, 2 times, you don't know the number, so you just put x. Now you don't even need that multiplication dot if you don't want to put it there. You can just leave it as 2x. Okay, so that would be your answer, 19 plus 2x for number 3. Let's move on to number 4 here. 17 times a number plus 1. Let's just write it as we go. 17, that's 17, times a number, well, that's just times x. You don't have to put the dot if you don't want to, or you could put the dot. Plus 1 at the very end, plus 1. It's too easy, right? Number 5. We have 130 decreased by twice a number. So we know decrease by means minus. So let me do this. We're going to underline decrease by. That means minus. The question is, do we switch this with this, or do we just write it without switching? The only time you switch is when you have the words than or from. So number 6, we have the word from. We're going to switch the order. Number 7, we have less than. We're going to switch. But right here, decrease by, you don't switch. I mean, think about this. If I said, what's your age decrease by 1? Well, you're going to put your age minus 1. So right here you have 130 decreased by twice a number. So you're just going to write it 130 decreased by twice a number, 2 times x. Moving on. Number 6, we have 1 subtracted from. Okay, so we already know that this means subtraction. But the word from is very important because it tells you that you need to switch the order. So we have subtraction, but you're going to take this 1 and not write it first. You're going to write it at the end. There's the 1 right there. Okay, so I wrote the 1, not at the beginning, but actually at the end of the minus sign. And then a number is going to go first. So that number, which we're going to call x, that's going to go first. So it's really x minus 1. And number 7, it's getting crammed. Let me write it over here on the left side. 89 less than, again, less subtract than implies a switch. So here's a minus sign. The 89 is going to go second, and then the square of a number is going to go first. So 89 goes second. Square of a number, remember square, the word square means the second power. So the square of a number is the square of x. You put that first. So there's your answer, x squared minus 89. Let's move on to simplifying using Pemdas. Okay, so we have two operations here. We have addition and division. So if you think about Pemdas, division comes first. The correct order of operations. So when we go 10 divided by 2, we get 5. So we have a 5 right there. And let's bring down the 6 and also the plus. And 6 plus 5 is 11. And we're done. Let's move on. Number 9, we have multiplication and division. What do we do first? If you forget your order of operations, go ahead and look at the top left corner of our classroom, and you'll know what to do first. Now, of course, when we have division and multiplication, why are the M and the D both blue? Because when you're faced with multiplying and dividing, you must go from left to right. So that doesn't mean that you're going to be doing multiplication first. That means that sometimes division comes first, sometimes multiplication comes first. It all depends on what comes first from left to right. So if I take a look at this, I need to go from left to right. So 60 divided by 10 times 3. So when I go 60 divided by 10, I get 6, and 6 times 3, that is 18. So do not make the mistake of thinking, oh, on Pemdas, I have the M before the D, I have to multiply first. That would be wrong. Okay, that would be wrong. If you multiply, that's going to be wrong. 10 times 3 is 30, and 60 divided by 30 is 2, and that's not the correct answer. The correct answer is 18. So again, the M and the D are both blue because whenever you're faced with multiplication and division, you go from left to right. Multiplication is not more important than division. Division is not more important than multiplication. They're both worth the same, so you go from left to right when you're faced with both, and that's exactly what we did here. Division came first from left to right, so I do the division first, then multiplication. Final answer is 18. Let's move on. Number 10, Pemdas. You're going to start with parentheses. What do we do when we look at parentheses? It tells us to zoom in and do whatever math possible. 9 take away 7 is 2. Okay, now I'm going to zoom out a little, and since I've already done what's inside of the parentheses, I'm just going to rewrite everything. So I'm going to keep the parentheses right there, even though there's nothing else to do in there. I'm going to bring down the square, the minus, the 23. I'm going to bring down the 4 that's in front of the parentheses, the plus, and the 2. So I've done parentheses. So after parentheses, what do we have here? We have E, exponents. So let's look for exponents, and we do have exponents. So let's actually do the 2 squared. I'm sorry, 2 squared. That's really 2 times 2, and 2 times 2 really is 4. Now let me rewrite everything. I'm going to bring down the parentheses again, bring down the 4, bring down the plus, the 2 out in the front, and the minus 23 at the end. So I've already done parentheses, I've already done E exponents. We are now moving to multiplication or division. So do we have multiplication or division? The answer is yes. We have multiplication right here between the 4s. So I need to multiply 4 times 4, that is 16. And I'm going to have a 2 out in front with the plus sign with the minus 23. Now we're down to the final step on Pemdas, addition or subtraction. And again, they're both the same color because whenever you're faced with adding or subtracting, you simply go left to right. You don't have to add before subtracting. Sometimes you subtract before adding, depending on what comes first from left to right. So from left to right, I have addition first, so I'm going to do that first. 2 plus 16 is 18. 18 minus 23 is negative 5. So my final answer is negative 5 right there. Again, thought process here, you have $18, you owe somebody $23. You can't pay them off. You could pay them the $18, but you're still going to owe them $5. That's why the answer is negative 5. Let's move on to the next question. Number 11. Okay, so we are faced with 3 operations here: multiplying, subtraction, and division. So obviously when we look at the Pemdas, multiplication and division comes before subtraction. So we need to multiply and divide first, and of course from left to right. So from left to right, we do have multiplication here, so we're going to do that first. 8 times 6 is 48. And then we're going to divide next. So I might as well do the division as well. What's 12 divided by 3? Now, if I do this 12 divided by 3 and don't include that minus sign, then you better drop that minus sign right here. And 12 divided by 3 is 4. So we really have this new problem right here, 48 minus 4. And 48, take away 4, that is 44. Final answer. Moving on to number 12. All right, number 12. Again, we are going to begin with P, parentheses. So right here we zoom in, and inside the parentheses we have several operations. We have addition, multiplication, and subtraction. Once again, what do? Do we add, subtract, or multiply, we're going to multiply first. So let's start with that multiplication. 4 times 6 is 24. We're going to bring down the plus sign, the 8, and the minus, and the 2. And of course, this is all still inside of the parentheses. And when you're faced with adding and subtracting, you're going to add first, in this case, because you go from left to right. So if this would have been a minus, you'd be subtracting first, but it's a plus, so you're going to be adding first. 8 plus 24, that is 32. Think about that for a while. 32, and then 32 minus 2, that will be 30. So inside the parentheses, we have 30. Now let me bring down everything that's on the outside of the parentheses, which there's not much. We have a plus, we have a 6, and we also have this divided by 2. So the question is, what do we do next? Do I add 6 plus 30 and get 36 and then divide it by 2? Of course not. You have two operations. Which one comes first, adding or division? Division comes first. So I need to do 30 divided by 2 first. 30 divided by 2 is 15, and we do have a 6 plus right in front of it. 6 plus 15 is 21. And that's it. That's your answer for number 12. Moving on. On these last 3 questions of the practice quiz, just like the last 3 questions of the actual quiz, we're going to be evaluating each variable expression, and then they give you the value a equals 6, b equals 2, c equals 4. So what does evaluate mean? It means plug it in. So we're going to plug in the values. If necessary, use parentheses if you want to feel more comfortable about it, and then simplify using Pemdas. So let me rewrite number 13. 2c squared, notice that I put parentheses squared, minus a times b, all divided by 2. So what I'm going to do now is identify the values that I need to plug in. So my c value here is actually going to be 4. C is 4, so I put a 4 right there. Okay. My a value is 6, so I put a 6 right here. And my b value is 2, so I put a 2 right here. Okay. And now we're going to focus in on this math. And again, Pemdas. Oh yeah, by the way, when you do have a fraction, something over something, simplify the top, simplify the bottom, and then at the very end, worry about reducing the fraction or actually dividing. So let's just focus in on the top up here. Up here we have multiplication, exponent, subtraction, and multiplication. So if you know Pemdas, you know that you're going to begin with exponents. So we're really going to have, let me go over here to the side, 4 squared, that is 16. And let me rewrite everything. I want to keep the 16 in parentheses. I want to put the 2 that's in the front, and then the minus, and then the parentheses 6 times 2. Okay, this is exactly what I have over here, except 4 squared is now 16. Now let's continue working. We now have multiplication and multiplication. So 2 times 16, that is 32. And 6 times 2, that is 12. And of course, we have the minus sign between them. So 32 take away 12, that is 20. Okay, so what we just did is we simplified the whole numerator, and we got 20. So, whoops. So the top is really 20. So down here, instead of writing all that stuff, I'm going to just write 20. And then on the bottom, the number 2 is already simplified. So we really have this problem saying 20 divided by 2. 20 divided by 2 is 10. Okay, that's your final answer for this question. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, the key to simplifying fractions is to simplify the numerator, simplify the denominator, and then at the very end, worry about the division bar, 20 divided by 2 giving you 10. So now you know. Number 4, the first thing to do is to replace those letters with parentheses. So that's exactly what I did. And now it's just a question of plugging in our values. So the a value of 6 goes right here. The c value of 4 goes right here. And the b value of 2 goes right here. And of course, when we zoom in, or not zoom in, but when we start simplifying this, we're going to begin with which operation? Subtraction, exponents, or addition? Of course, exponents. So when we do 4 squared, that's 16. 4 times 4 is 16. Let's rewrite everything. Now notice, there's nothing out here to multiply the 6 by, so the parentheses are totally unnecessary. I'm just going to bring it down as 6 minus 16 plus, and again, the parentheses here are totally unnecessary. because you're not multiplying it by anything. It's just a plus sign in front. So I'm just going to write it as 2 right down here. So let's continue adding and subtracting from left to right. So 6 minus 16, 6 minus 16, that's negative 10. Bring down the plus 2. Negative 10 plus 2, you owe somebody $10, you only have $2. You could give them those $2, but you're still going to owe them $8. Last one, let's replace everything with parentheses. Well, every variable with parentheses, I'm sorry, not everything, but every variable. So you have 4a, in other words, 4 parentheses plus 2 times parentheses minus parentheses squared. And now let's plug in our values a, b, and c. So there are values plugged in. A is 6, B is 2, and C is 4. And now let's work this out. We are going to multiply first, add first, multiply, subtract, or do exponents. Of course, everybody should think exponents. 4 squared is 16. 4 times 4 is 16. After that, let me bring down everything just so we don't get confused. After that, we are going to multiply. There's multiplication here and here. Okay, so 4 times 6 is 24. 2 times 2 is 4. Of course, we have the plus sign that comes down between the 24 and the 4. And of course, the minus 16 also comes down. So we have addition and subtraction. We're going to go from left to right. 24 plus 4, that is 28. And then bring down the minus 16. So 28 minus 16 is 12. I'm done. I went a little over the time I wanted on this video. It's about 17 minutes, I'm sorry. But it's going to be pretty much identical to the quiz. Not identical, but very similar to the quiz. Study it. Good luck.